Today we're going to continue on talking about products, and more specifically talk about new product development and something called the product life cycle. So we'll talk about how companies find and develop new products and the steps in the new product development process, and then we'll talk about the different stages of a product life cycle and how the marketing mix changes for each different stage of the life cycle. So let's talk about new products. Why do companies introduce new products onto the marketplace? And there are some very sort of obvious reasons. That first of all, customers' needs do change, and there may be new needs that are developed. But very often the market is constantly changing, and that is creating new needs, and so companies will respond. They'll also want to remain competitive. Perhaps a competitor has done something to improve their product, and so they need to introduce a new product to respond to that so they don't look old and outdated. Maybe a change in technology, or some products are just getting old and tired and consumers are not interested in them anymore. Well, I guess the last reason is that there's diversity. Sometimes companies just need to have more than one product so they don't have all their eggs in one basket, and so they develop some new products. Successful new products really should be unique. They should really contribute to what's going on in the marketplace and have a very well-defined product concept. Just bringing out a new product for the sake of a new product doesn't guarantee its success at all. In fact, when you look at new products, about 90% of new products fail. In other words, don't do very well in the market. And that's a very, very high number. Two examples that I have here are garlic cake and black eye some sort of rejuvenator product for black eyes. These products weren't very successful. There are a lot of sort of key reasons. One of the reasons is an overestimated market. They just assume too much that consumers want this particular product. And a lot of that is attributable to the fact that they don't do good market research beforehand. Poor design, incorrect positioning, error in pricing. It's either too expensive or not expensive enough that people sort of disregard it. The marketing communication isn't very good. The advertising doesn't support it very well. It's a production orientation, meaning it's not really what consumers want. There wasn't a strong need that the product was developed in response to. The company was able to make it, and therefore they assumed that people would automatically buy it. Cost overruns are really common, that there's not a good business analysis done ahead of time to determine how much the product is going to cost, and so when they start developing, they realize that it's much more expensive to develop than what they thought, and as a result, they're not making any money from it. And finally, competition. They may develop the product, but a competitor does a better job of developing it, or they just underestimated the competition, and consumers aren't buying that product. So there is sort of a number of stages in the product development process, starting with idea generation, idea screening, concept development and testing, marketing strategy, a business analysis, product development, test marketing, and commercialization. So let's sort of talk a little bit about each one of these steps, starting with idea generation. So where do ideas come from for new products? Well, they should come from customers, right? Remember, this is a marketing orientation. We want to try to develop products that are in response to consumer needs. So market research is a key area to sort of look at how consumers living their lives, how they're using various products, the sort of activities that they do, and seeing if you can develop new products that will satisfy their needs better. Some ideas also come from individuals within the company. There are some people that do nothing but try to sit around and think about new products, and some companies like 3M, which really reward their employees for innovative ideas. Also, companies will look at competitors or their suppliers or partners, other organizations that they work with that perhaps come up with product ideas, or they can do it jointly. So once ideas are developed, they then go through sort of a screening stage to sort of find the ideas that have promise, that have good potential, and getting rid of some ideas that just aren't great ideas before we start to spend a lot of money on it. And so they'll use estimates of, sort of market size, how acceptable the product will be, how much it's going to cost to manufacture, at least on a preliminary basis. whether we think the product is really useful, does it fit with the organization's core competencies? In other words, the company does some things well. Is this a product that can benefit from that, or is does it require a whole new set of manufacturing techniques or expertise or resources that we just don't have? And does it add value to the customer? Do we think the customer really wants this particular product? Once we've identified a couple of ideas that we want to sort of move forward, we'll take it into a product concept. We'll mock it up, maybe do something on paper, do some sort of representation so customers can now have a look at it. And so we'll move into a concept testing stage where we'll get some target customers in and get them to give us some feedback. Again, you've always got to involve customers in this process because you're trying to generate a product that will respond to one of their needs. So getting them to evaluate the concept. And if you think it's a great idea but customers just like it, then it should be stopped before a lot of money is spent. But assuming they do, and maybe there will be some improvements that they'll suggest, we could then move to think about a strategy, a marketing strategy. So what is the target market that this product is going after? What exactly is it that we sort of consider to be the product, and how might it be priced, and how might it be distributed and promoted? So building a strategy associated with that particular product like we'd, in order to take it onto the market. Once that's done, then we can do a business case analysis. So we can not only look at the marketing costs associated with it, but we can look at the manufacturing costs and get a good idea of what the revenue will be. So we can determine what the profitability will be for this product. It may be a very interesting strategy and we may be able to sell a lot of product, but the cost may be such that we're not going to make any money from it, in which case it should be stopped at this point. But provided there is a good profit potential, then we can start to move forward. At that point, we're going to move into product development. So we'll make a prototype, or we'll start to sort of develop the product that we can test further. So if we had thought about this idea of making an energy efficient car, well, let's mock it up. Let's get some of these cars made and put them into consumers' hands and let them try them for a while and see whether the benefits are really there. Once that's done and we feel that we've got a concept that is now working and we've got some of the bugs out, we can then move into test marketing. So on a small scale, we're going to implement the whole marketing mix and see whether in fact we're getting the results that we anticipate. And so if the test marketing works, we should then have a criteria of a go or no-go decision. And that means, are we going to launch it on a larger scale, or are we going to cut our losses and say this product is just not being accepted by the marketplace, and stop it right there before we spend a lot of money to start to commercialize it. And that's the final step, introducing the product onto the market. And this can be very expensive. If you look at the US market, to launch, for example, a new brand of laundry detergent and do that nationally, that's about a $40 million expenditure in just advertising costs. So it can be a very expensive process to do that. And there's also costs with scaling up and generating production lines and hiring people to be involved in the production process. And so there's a tremendous amount of cost to get a product commercialized. And you've really got to make sure that you've done the product development process very well, so that you've got the chances of getting a successful product will be very high when you actually go to commercialize and launch it. Now, products are somewhat like people in that they are born, they live a very happy and hopefully prosperous life, and then there is a demise, they decline. The concept of a product life cycle was developed in the 1950s, and it's still a concept that is around and we use today to think about products and launching new products onto the marketplace.